you can still return home even if you're not perfect. And I think that's really sort of the takeaway for me with the Odyssey. As long as you have the desire, as long as you can refocus, as long as you can get back on track, you can forgive yourself, you can make mistakes, and you can still get there and you can still find your happiness.
It is a sunny day here at the Myth Slayer Cafe, although during the course of this conversation, we might get to see a little bit of a sunset. I have with me someone I have been very excited about bringing to the cafe ever since the day we met. His name is Lawrence O. You're going to find out a lot more about him as this conversation proceeds, and you can always look at the caption right below. But before we get into that, I want to say, Lawrence, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's a real pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. Today, we're going to discuss the myth of Odysseus. I cannot believe we have not focused on this character at all during this series so far. And so I'm really glad that you raised him, Lawrence, as a person that you wanted to talk about. Tell us a little bit about who Odysseus is and why you chose him as the subject of this conversation.
Sure. So I'll just tell you that I first learned of Odysseus from a Channel 7 late Sunday afternoon movie with Kirk Douglas. I think he played Ulysses, the Ulysses version of Odysseus, right? And then I was introduced to him a little bit more academically in college, in my great works class freshman year in college, through the Iliad. And of course, the story of the Trojan War. The real story of Odysseus is his journey home and how that takes so long. And I think it takes 20 years. And that was, those were two epics that we read in our great works class, the Iliad and the Odyssey. And what struck me about Odysseus's story is how it struck me over the course of years. That when I read the story as a 18 or 19-year-old freshman, it had one meaning: his heroicism, his commitment to his wife, his drive to return home and never to lose sight of that objective. But as I grew older and as I had more experience, more life experience, what struck me more was what his entailed entailed. Mistakes maybe that he made, maybe the fact that he wasn't always as committed to his wife as we were led to believe, or we were led to focus and concentrate on, his relationships with other women over the course of those 20 years, how he got lost along the way, the many obstacles that he faced, and the many sort of decisions that he made. Like, for one thing that always struck me was that when they came across the sirens, these winged beasts that sang beautifully, but would cause ships and captains to bring their vessels close to rocks and would get dashed against the rocks and killing their crew. He knew of the sirens but was so desirous of wanting to hear their beautiful voices that he plugged all of his crew's ears with wax so that they couldn't hear, had him lashed to the mast of the ship so that he could enjoy their beautiful songs, and told his crew, under no circumstances are you to release me, or under no circumstances are you to listen to what I say while I listen to them sing, fearing that he might have them redirect the ship towards the rocks. So that was an incredibly sort of, in my opinion, a poor choice, right? I mean, you got people's lives at stake here. You've got your own life at stake. You've got your family's life, your wife and your son, and you're trying to get home, and you're going to risk the ship's crew and your own life to listen to the beautiful songs of the sirens. So I thought there were things about Odysseus's choices along the way that showed that you can still return home even if you're not perfect. And I think that's really sort of the takeaway for me.
That was so well done, Lawrence, that I had a moment in which I was thinking, this man better not take my job. Bravo. That was amazing for a number of different reasons that I'm sure we will delve into during this conversation. But let's start with a statement on my end, which is that you really captured the multidimensionality of Odysseus as a character and the complexity that the Odyssey brings into the room, and the Iliad as well, about how someone can still be a hero or achieve heroic objectives, even if you make bad decisions, or even if you are, temporarily at least, caught up in ego-driven or narcissistic desires, like listening to the sirens rather than focusing on saving your crew's lives. I also am struck by the underlying theme in the Odyssey in particular, and for whatever reason it stirred inside of me as you were recounting the story of going home. Home. To me, as someone who is driven by a mission in life, home means that place in which I have actualized that mission. And you and I both have something in common, and that is that the journey that we have embarked on, as well as the meaning of home, is radically different from those that we were around as we engaged in our first Trojan War, also known as law school.
Like yourself, I'm a Columbia Law alum, and Columbia Law School is, as most of us know, in New York City. New York City is many capitals of the United States and many capitals of the world, and one capital it is the legal capital of the country. As part of the legal capital, it's also the capital of some of the most prestigious and largest and successful law firms. And if you look into the history of a lot of the famous historical law firms, they were started by Columbia Law grads. So it's a natural place to go. As you know, Columbia Law School drives much of its alumni into corporate law, into big law firms. My path was a little different. I went and joined a prosecutor's office. I went to the Brooklyn District Attorney's office. One of the things that my mom has displayed up in a room in her home is a local town newspaper article about me. I was a good student in high school, and the last line it said is that I wanted to attend an Ivy League school, and I wanted to be a criminal attorney. And I think I was a junior in high school when I was interviewed for this particular article. Ultimately, I went into the Brooklyn DA's office, and I was there for 22 years.
Amazing.
I was hoping that even though I was pursuing this sort of non-traditional path, in some respects, that I would be good at it. And I discovered that I wasn't really good at it in the beginning. And I would say that after starting at the Brooklyn DA's office in 1994, it wasn't really until I'd say 2002, 2001 that I can say that I became what I look back on now as someone who really knew what they were doing and was in command of their abilities, exercised good judgment, was a good prosecutor, was a successful prosecutor. And I think that's really when my career began. Wasn't in 1994 when I graduated from law school. It was really in 2002, I think, after having been at the DA's office for 8 years at that point.
At Columbia Law School. And not only did you go there, but I believe we were there around the same time. In fact, we overlapped. And in that particular era, if you went to law school, the debt burden, first of all, that you left with was so onerous that for many people, it all but seemingly forced them into big law firm jobs where you could have a salary that would allow you to pay back your debt and still do things like, I don't know, buy food. And if you went into public service, as you and I both did, yo, I ate a lot of canned tuna and rice that I got on the cheap in bulk from grocery stores. I couldn't afford much better. So that is a sacrifice that I made, but I nonetheless didn't feel like that stung as much as did the experience I had when I told people what I would be doing. I went into the office of an organization called the Corporation Counsel's Office, which is the law firm that represents the city of New York in its civil litigation. And it's not a private law firm. It is a government agency like the Brooklyn DA's office. And people often made assumptions. Oh, your grades must have been bad. Or, oh, you must have been rejected by every law firm that condescended to talk to you. Or, oh, you may have something wrong with you. And I was really sensitive about that. It led me to feel a lot of times that by choosing my own path and doing something that I felt was more aligned with what I wanted to do, I was somehow nonetheless being a failure.
The only social, I would say, friction that I encountered was coming to Brooklyn, going to Brooklyn, joining the office and working with other prosecutors in the Brooklyn DA's office. I was the only person from California in my class of, let's say, 25 or 28, maybe 30 first-year prosecutors. I definitely stuck out. There were, at the time, not that many Asian lawyers. There were Asian lawyers, but not that many. And there were fewer Asian prosecutors. So I went in just kind of having 2 or 3 things that were slightly unusual about me. My presentation was different. You could tell by the way I spoke that I wasn't from New York. I was having still difficulties in transitioning from living in California my whole life to living in New York City. I would say that it was difficult fitting in, and it was difficult excelling as a prosecutor, as a lawyer, doing a good job in court, winning cases. I lost my first trial, and then I never lost another trial as a prosecutor. But still, it was incredibly difficult going for me for the first few years as an assistant DA.
And going back to the theme of Odysseus, you go on a journey that might not be a traditional one. Along the way, you encounter people and cultures and situations that are very difficult for you. I started my legal practice in the Bronx, litigating personal injury cases. And I'd spent my entire life up until law school in the Midwest. And there I was after 3 years in Columbia Law School, which was very ivory tower, which people spoke and acted a certain way that did not fly in the South Bronx with street litigators at all. And it caused discomfort. How did you learn to deal with the discomfort that came from interfacing in the milieu that you had intentionally set yourself into by setting aside your professional path, from what a law school like Columbia traditionally sets itself up as bringing students into?
What really did it for me were 2 things. One was finding myself as an investigative prosecutor. So finding myself not being just given a case and saying, take this case to court, litigate it, try it, and win it. Instead, being given something that wasn't quite a case yet and saying, hey, look, there is a problem in this neighborhood with the number of homicides and the number of violent crimes. And we need you to devise a strategy using the narcotics laws of the state of New York to identify who the traffickers are and whether they are responsible for any of these violent crimes. We believe they are. And devising a investigative plan and strategy to infiltrating and then dismantling and then prosecuting these individuals. That allowed me to employ a degree of creativity, of strategic thinking, of operational planning that really was something that took well to me, that I took well to, and that plus a mentor. I had a prosecutor who came into my life as my supervisor in 2002, who was really the person I think that I had been waiting to work with and work for as a prosecutor, and she showed me the formula that she used, and it matched the formula of how I wanted to be a prosecutor and how I wanted to practice law, and the two finally matched. And so I had been given kind of a rubric, a different kind of formula by other supervisors and other prosecutors, a different way of arguing cases, a different way of creating cases, and it just felt asymmetrical to me, and it felt just it didn't feel like this was the most complete and thorough way of of prosecuting cases. But when I met this person and she showed me, her philosophy, her style, I really flourished as a prosecutor and as a lawyer.
We're going to talk in more detail about that sort of mentoring in a moment. That's an incredibly important point that goes actually as to the story of Odysseus. But let's step back for a minute and talk about the way in which you found a prosecutorial function that played to, as you described it, your creative, visionary, operational, strategic sensibilities. In my experience, many professionals, such as attorneys, but not just attorneys, have as the focus of their education the development of the technical skills that they need to wrap their arms around in order to succeed as individual contributors. And in law school, for instance, if you are someone that is really good at two particular, in my opinion, technical skills, issue spotting and taking tests in a quick fashion, you are going to be very, very well rewarded. You may end up on law review. You probably have your choice of clerkships that you can go into. You can pretty much walk your way into whatever huge law firm you might want. But even though the development of those particular skills might be something that the overwhelming majority of law students take well to, and there's data I've seen that indicates that that is the case, for those who might not have their strengths there, it can take uncovering a different way of moving forward in order to really have your talents blossom and bloom. One of the downsides I see about the over reward of these technical skills is that when a lot of these attorneys get out into the world, they're great at receiving cases and writing awesome briefs, writing, doing a nice oral argument in court, doing incredible due diligence, which, by the way, was never my thing, ever, and never will be. Right? Doing those sorts of things, but not necessarily being strategic, certainly not being creative, absolutely not operational, because the focus on the weeds that is day-to-day practitioner work, issue spotting, taking exams, those sorts of things, aren't what takes you to a different level when it comes to having a career that is diverse, multidimensional, and can be genuinely exciting. How do you agree with me, first of all? And what would you have to say, having been through what you've been through, to those who may be feeling a little bit like similarly they're off when they're learning these skills, They're not picking it up as quickly as their colleagues might. They know they have skills, but they might even be forgetting what they really are.
Desire and passion play a tremendous role in success and effectiveness in any professional area, particularly in law. You can be a good writer, you can be a good arguer, you can be a good issue spotter, you can be a good researcher. Yeah, you can do all those mechanical things well. But what really makes you successful as an attorney, as a litigator, as a criminal attorney, is passion. Once you feel the passion, how exactly you write, how exactly you argue, um, whatever shortcomings there are or aren't, those will fall into place. Because as long as you feel strongly about what you're doing, you will do the work, you will find the way to get to the end point, to get to your objective, and to do a great job. So even though I started off my career at the district attorney's office as an appellate attorney, and I was a good writer and I was a good researcher, I always was. Um, I did well in oral arguments in appellate court. Um, by the time I got to criminal court and Supreme Court in New York State and was trying cases and calling witnesses and preparing and interviewing witnesses, uh, all of that good mechanical stuff, it fell out the window. Like, I just wasn't prepared for this kind of work. Um, and it was a question of passion and commitment that allowed me to get to the point where I was able to improve. I was able to see how other lawyers made their cases, how they made their arguments, what worked in court. And then again, finally, that mentor that kind of came into my life and showed me, hey, you can do it your way. You don't have to do it the way other people tell you. You can find your way, massage that, perfect that, hone that, even if it doesn't work in the beginning, and stretch that into victory.
Odysseus was either trapped or voluntarily lived with a sorceress named 𝗓𝗏 for a significant period of time during his journey home. And initially, she was turning his men into swine, right? And so before he decided to shack up with her and have a few children by her, his mission was to save his men from being completely turned into animals, and he had to learn how to do this. The goddess Athena, who was generally regarded by the ancient Greeks as the mentor of heroes, sent Hermes, the messenger of the gods, to explain to Odysseus exactly how he could protect himself in 𝗓𝗏's presence and then be able to get her to turn his men back into human beings. And I say all of that to sort of get to the point of this mentor. She said to you, not how you can be better at the skills other people think you might need, or by better at playing the game other people are playing, but she said, how can you do it on your terms? Was it difficult, shocking, revelatory, confusing, anything, when you heard that you could do it on your own terms?
Yes, it was shocking, because before I was told, you got to do it this way. You got to say it this way. And here are the different arguments that you make. And you were given like a laundry list of different things to say about witness credibility, about inconsistencies, about bias on summation. And you were given a lot of cliches and aphorisms, right? And she said, like, those things can work, right? They work for some. They don't work for me. You got to find what works for you, because the only thing you have to worry about is when you are summing up, when you're trying a case, do you believe in what you're saying? That is the only litmus test for the jury. If the jury feels that you are speaking in a way that you believe what you are saying, they're more apt, they're more inclined to believe what you have to say, and they're going to return a guilty verdict. We're prosecutors, so that was the outcome that we were desiring if we went to trial. And that to me was kind of shocking because it was something I had always believed. Because obviously, the way I did things was not always orthodox. Of course, to succeed in school and college and law school, you have to be able to check off certain boxes. You have to come in and you have to get, you have to perform at a certain
Yeah.
level. But the way that I would succeed wasn't always the orthodox route. And so I had been accustomed to succeeding using different tools, using different techniques. But when it came to real life, and this is where it really matters, right? Because school is just
Yeah.
one thing, getting a grade is just one thing, scoring a particular way on a test is validating in a very, very narrow way. Um, Coming into a courtroom in New York City with jurors of every demographic, of every
Yeah.
class, of every occupation, of every age, um, and convincing them of an argument that you're making that you might have won in a courtroom, in a mock trial, in a moot courtroom, in a courtroom in high school, in a courtroom of your own fantasy and devise, is one thing. Coming into a real world courtroom, and making this argument and losing, and
Yeah.
then trying to pick up the pieces and wondering what happened, is a really bewildering experience. It's a very alienating experience. It's a very humbling experience for someone who's been winning his whole life. And so to have someone come to you and say, no, it can still work, right? You just need to find the way to make it work, and give you a little bit of um, a recipe, a little bit of an adjustment that puts 90% of what you're doing, alters it by a slight angle, and all of a sudden now it works where it didn't.
Yeah. I have to say, I would only imagine that it would be important to have that realization in one way or another before you lose the passion. Because to me, if during the times in which I was litigating, I didn't have a mentor that really provided me with that sort of support during that era of my life. It ultimately ended up being for the best, so I don't feel bad or angry or anything about that. But I will say that it's one of those things where after a while, I just didn't have at that point the wisdom or the perspective or just the emotional intelligence developed enough to independently say, let me just do it my way. I wasn't raised in a family that taught me you do things your way. I mean, my father worked as a highway patrolman. He was in the military before that. My mother worked in a factory. You didn't just walk into a factory and just do it your way. It just didn't happen. And so that shift in mindset is something that I think, your parents might not have been factory workers. They may have been lawyers or they may have been architects or engineers, but they may have still not necessarily instilled in you the idea that you can and perhaps should do it your way before you lose your passion. Do you think hearing that the passion that you felt after that was tied to what you were doing, or was it tied to the act of discovering and figuring out what it looks like for Lawrence and Lawrence alone was?
When I was being transferred into an investigative bureau, uh, almost immediately I felt passionate now about what I was doing. Um, you know, I liked being a prosecutor up until 1999, 2000. So that was about 5 years. I liked it. I was looking forward to flourishing, developing, becoming better, becoming good, becoming great. Um, and that was kind of what really drove me. But once I became an investigative prosecutor, I really became passionate about what I was doing. And I think that plus the development of finding my own way and being successful in finding my own way, those two things kind of came to a head together. And I was able to maintain my passion long enough. Um, and fortunately, I didn't have to wait too much longer after I was assigned to this investigative bureau that I found this mentor and I found the key to unlocking my success.
It's perfectly acceptable in the eyes of many within our profession, as well as in other professions, and in fact, within a whole host of careers, to like what you do and be okay with that. But once you feel passion for it, can you ever settle for going back, Lawrence? And how does that differ from just liking something?
I've gotten to where I've come, and it's taken me this long, in a way, to get to a point now where I'm transitioning into law technology, into a startup, into owning my own company, into building a product. Um, everything I've done, everything I've pursued has been out of passion, out of a desire for passion. Um, I believe that you can find great happiness in doing something that you just like, that you are not fiery passionate about. You can find that passion somewhere else. You can find it in your personal life. You can find it in another part of your life, your relationships with other people, community, um, another um, uh, life kind of pursuit that is outside of the professional realm. There's a lot of different ways you can find that passion. I think as humans we need to have passion. Um, but for me, what worked is finding passion in what I do professionally. Other people can find it elsewhere outside of the professional realm. I'm sure that they can find great happiness. I think that they can reach their Odysseus-like journey end and objective without having that passion at work. But for me, that's how I understand that story.
You went from a career trajectory that was within the legal world unconventional into an area that you're currently transitioning into now, which is, yeah, I would imagine not principally legal at all, or at least it's not something where you're applying day to day the skills that you learned in law school, right? How did you deal with any reservations you might have had about stepping into this transition? What made you decide to move in this direction, even though it is leaning even further away from what your original high school or junior high intention might have been?
One thing more personally is I have an inner voice that speaks to me in the morning. That's usually what wakes me up. So I will have some issues that I'm cooking, that are marinating, that I'm thinking about, a case, a personal choice, um, some type of judgment, something that befell me, some type of bad news, and processing. This type of information, this type of these types of occurrences that happen to you over the course of a day in your life, and then the answer will kind of come to me in the morning. It worked really well as a prosecutor, as a litigator, as a lawyer. I would have a problem, I would have an issue, and I would come to an answer sometime in the morning, having thought about it in my subconscious. So. Um, my career direction, my career choice to go into law tech was one where I just listened to myself. It was something that I couldn't escape. It was something that I couldn't walk away from. I kept hearing the voice, and it kept saying, "This is what you need to be pursuing." And I think at its root was I felt one of the great things about being a prosecutor, about being in criminal law, is it's impactful.
Mm.
It's um, it's determinative. Um, uh, Sometimes at a large level, sometimes at a very small level,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes but always at a personal level. And it's always impactful, and that's what's so rewarding about it. That's what allows us to be so passionate about criminal
Yeah.
law, whether you're a prosecutor or a private criminal defense attorney. And um, I wanted to do something after being a prosecutor that was impactful. So I first started off by becoming a solo practitioner criminal attorney. And I also left the prosecutor's office saying, I want to do something that's more impactful on a macro level
Mm-hmm.
beyond just being a lawyer, something that helps bring justice to people in a more meaningful way, in a more transformative way.
You did go into a somewhat detailed discussion about this voice that spoke to you. I call that voice, and clients I work with almost invariably during our initial conversations describe something akin to what you're talking about as speaking to them, although they may not have, in fact, they frequently don't have clarity around what that voice is telling them. They nonetheless hear this push that, as you described, and the way I heard it was almost, and I know you weren't necessarily making an inferences one way, or making an inference one way or the other, but it's almost like this mystical push. I describe it as the call. And when I ask them if they feel the call, they almost always say yes. That's what I'm hearing you describe as the call. And if they feel the call, I tell them exactly what you've just shared. It
Sure.
probably won't go away. Now we can work together to figure out what it is. But if you choose to attempt to ignore it, the call, once you have it, it doesn't stop. Some say to me, it's hubristic for me to think that I have the call. I just did an interview with someone named 𝗿𝗏𝗏 where we shared the story of the hero Bellerophon that tamed the winged horse Pegasus. Bellerophon, whose statue is right outside of our law school, right? On Pegasus, he attempted to fly up to Mount Olympus to join the gods, and Zeus threw a thunderbolt at him, and he fell to the earth and was completely and utterly humbled and left a beggar and blind and all this sort of stuff that was horrible. And so they fear, am I just being driven by ego? Am I being a narcissist? In saying that I want to have an impact, that I'm capable of more, am I living out a fantasy? Am I lying? Did you ever have any sort of thoughts like that? Again, what would you say to those who might be hearing this and saying, this speaks to me, but I'm afraid, or I think I might be being egotistical or whatever? Because even you're saying, I want to have an impact. I want to have an impact on a macro level, you said. That's ambitious. But some people might feel it's narcissistic.
What are you going to regret less? And that's the other question that has to accompany the call, as you put it. You hear a voice, you hear a pull, you hear gravity exercising its inexorable force on you, and you have to ask yourself, am I going to regret giving into this, following this, or am I going to regret saying no? And that's the choice that you have to make right there. And the question of narcissism is a really good one, because if all of us were to heed that call, we would have problems. We would have a lot of trouble because some of us would be heeding a call that was unrealistic, would be heeding a call that was self-harmful, that would be heeding a call that would harm other people around us. So there has to be some type of evaluation that accompanies it. Um, and hopefully people make intelligent choices. But I think the question of regret, and the older we get, the better position we are to evaluate which decision we're going to regret more? Heeding the call or resisting it and fighting it?
Another issue that comes up, particularly for lawyers, is if I heed my call, I'll end up poor. My base salary is $350,000 to $25, and that's not counting my bonus. And if I'm a partner, $350,000 a year is when I'm super po. Right. Did you ever have any concern about that? Because Lawrence, when I went down my current path, if I said to my, which I did, if my call was to be this avatar of a message that Greek myths are the ultimate personal and professional transformational tool, and I'm going to be out there spreading the word around that. There was a period where people didn't want to hear that, or they thought I was crazy, or it was ridiculous, or I wasn't expressing it well. And I won't lie, I was poor. Right? Like, did you have any of that, or do you have any of that, and how do you address it? In light of this call and everything that you just said about narcissism too, which was really well taken and well put.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't say how that plays out for everyone. Everyone has slightly different circumstances, slightly different timing issues. In my own case, when I came out from the DA's office, I stayed long enough to acquire a pension. I stayed long enough to build up a 401k. I stayed long enough to become a good enough litigator that out on my own, I've been successful as a private lawyer in criminal cases and in non-criminal cases. There's been some appetite for my abilities in the courtroom outside of the criminal law context. So that's something I feel like I can fall back on, right? So I I can't speak about heeding the call in a vacuum, heeding the call in a way that exposes one and leaves one vulnerable um, to certain desperate outcomes. Like if that doesn't work out, that's why I phrase it in the terms of regret. Once you start speaking about how you're going to feel in the future, right? Um, that kind of bakes in the analysis of can I afford to do this? Is this a good choice? Is this a good decision? And that's why I think what you said earlier was so important, which is that, following your passion, like that's very romantic. That's very idealistic.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's great. I want to watch that on the silver screen. But that's not always appropriate for everybody. And that's why I say you can find your passion elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in the job space. But for me, that's what worked. I built out a career. I built out an aptitude. I built out a level of ability in the courtroom that is allowing me to kind of pursue this passion, to build on this passion, and to follow this law technology calling of mine now. That I feel if I didn't follow, I would regret more because I would just do more of what I've been doing, which has been doing well in the courtroom.
The nuanced approach to that is something that gets lost in the professional transformational space. Honestly, it gets lost in the general self-improvement space, particularly when it comes to cliches like follow your passion or follow your dreams or do what you love. Because you're right, sometimes, like, let's say you have 5 kids and the oldest of them is 12, and your passion is to go back to law school and someday end up on the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, that's conceivably possible, but you may not be able to pursue your passion now. And there are non-negotiables that I at least work with my clients on and had to have in place myself with regards to some of this stuff. Like you, I left my years working as a lawyer and executive with the city of New York with that pension in place. So if I suffered a financial shortfall, it wasn't like it was going to be forever. It was going to be when that pension and my other savings all were able to kick in. So it's not like I was really worried about spending my golden years eating dog food, right? That just wasn't going to happen thanks to the planning I had done, and because a non-negotiable for me was not living my elder years in absolute destitution. I couldn't face doing that. And so the call, and a call tethered to passion, can feel so compelling that having the judgment to be able to weigh all of those things is huge. How hard was that weighing for you? Or am I hearing it wasn't that hard because you had done the planning in the first place?
Yeah, I think for me, it just unfolded naturally. Like it took me longer to get to where I am now, that I had to stay, and over the course of time, the pension years just started adding up. So it was kind of a natural occurrence for me. If I had this call maybe earlier in my career, I don't know exactly what my response would have been at that time. But it just everything took longer for me to become a good litigator, to be a good trial lawyer, to become a good prosecutor. That by the time that happened, and by the time I was open and receptive to a new call, it was all kind of organically laid out for me. So I didn't have that same dilemma, that same difficult decision that maybe other people may face.
You're pointing back to something that we raised right at the top of the discussion when you went through so eloquently the story of Odysseus. It took him 20 years to get home. For those of us, look, Troy, where this war was fought, was in Turkey. Greece is, it's not 20 years away. Right? It's the easiest little ride that there is. And yet it took him 20 years. And what I'm hearing you say is that, for some of us, that call might take a while. And that's okay.
Right.
We can read about Mark Zuckerberg or someone else finding their call when they were 23, but sometimes waiting longer can allow it to be organic. Odysseus wouldn't have been the hero that he is if it just took him a 45-minute plane ride to get back to Ithaca, where he was from.
The great success stories that we hear are often skewed in terms of how whether or not they can be applicable to people to other people, um, uh, young people onto whom great fortune and success befall early in their lives. That's that's unusual. That doesn't happen very often. For most people, that's why I said to you in my response to you before we began our discussion that I feel like there's a little bit of Odysseus in most of us, because if it's not the journey as it was for me professionally, it could be the journey that's more emotional or that's more personal for somebody else. That journey can take different guises for each of us. And for me, it happened to be a professional journey. For Odysseus, it happened to be his personal life. It happened to be geography. It happened to be his family. So I feel like this notion that we have to make choices, that we're faced with like dilemmas and choices, and that the call is an early thing isn't always the case with a lot of us. That call, and there are many calls sometimes. It's not just the professional call, but a call in your personal life or in some other realm. That call comes over time. That we get that call maybe more than once in different areas of our lives.
There is a whole line of metaphysical thinking that goes as to that exact point, which is more or less that the purpose of life for any of us is to follow whatever set of lessons that we as beings are here to learn. And those lessons may be exactly what you're talking about, fulfilling a professional call and having a large social, legal, technological, economic, whatever impact. For other people, it may be developing emotionally or building deeper connections with their family. For others, it may be experiencing satisfaction through a hobby that they find intensely fulfilling, or through an artistic endeavor, whether full-time or on the side. And so what you're saying really speaks as to the deeper, perhaps the deepest theme of this show, which is, well, what is myth as a transformational tool? The power of characters like Odysseus is that what they stand for isn't just limited to any one thing. They occupy transformational spaces across the spectrum. I think it's beautiful the way you were able to bring all of that back, Lawrence.
Thanks. And there's one other thing I want to talk about with respect to Odysseus and the journey. So, and every time I think of Odysseus, I always think of Peter O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia. And there's a line where Omar Sharif and Peter O'Toole speak about something being written. It is written. It is written that that no man can cross the Nafu desert, like this desert that is unpassable, as they talk about taking Damascus, and of course, T.E. Lawrence accomplishes that, and he says that nothing is written. There are no rules, right? And so, as much as I look at the Odyssey as a metaphor of a journey that takes time, it doesn't have to take 20 years either. That is also not written. You can talk things out. You can think things through. You can use your community. You can use resources like Scott Mason. You can use other resources like your family, like your friends, other lawyers, to discuss things so that you can begin your journey sooner and hopefully find your happiness and your destination and your objective sooner as well. So the Odyssey doesn't need to take 20 years for all of us. It's not something that I'm saying or prescribing is going to take you time. It happened to take time for me. It can be a 1 year long journey. It can be a 2 year long journey. It's still an Odyssey. It's not the distance that you travel, but it's about the transformation that takes place. So nothing is written.
Speaking of nothing being written, I don't want to leave this non-written conversation without a brief discussion about this legal text opportunity that you are stepping into. Tell us about it. I'm curious. I've got to know.
So my partner and I, 𝗕𝗵𝗄 𝗵𝗆, also a Stanford alum, have built a law and AI company, and we are trying to create a true AI-based co-litigator, and that's the name of our company, 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏, COLIT, and you can find it at colit.ai. We're trying to build a true AI-based co-litigator that helps attorneys win cases in the courtroom, out of the courtroom, by writing motions, by helping you write briefs, by helping you devise arguments and questions in preparation for deposition, hearings, and trial. We have an argument engine that when you upload your case file into, we will help you find all of the material data within your case file that helps or hurts your case claim. So that's what we're building right now. And we have a number of products. We're live. We're offering services. We'd love for attorneys to try us out. The larger objective of 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 is obviously to make attorneys' lives easier, allow attorneys to grow and build their practices and make more money ultimately. But at a larger level, at a more impactful level, we're hoping that services and tools like 𝗠𝗏𝗏𝗏 will allow lawyers to do more lawyering. You talked a lot earlier about the mechanistic aspect of being a
Yeah.
lawyer, of like issue spotting, of writing, and
Yeah.
we're taught so much of that in law school and trained how to do these types of things. But what I think really captures the essence of a lawyer, what really makes a lawyer is not good writing and researching and issue spotting, but is in exercising judgment, decision making, in choice, in strategy. These are intrinsically, I believe, human qualities that are not substitutable by AI, certainly not at the moment. And the less that we have to focus on flipping through and thumbing through documents looking for something, the less we have to spend on writing a response that very often resembles the response we've written for issues like this 10 times, 100 times before. The more lawyers can spend on deciding larger questions, strategy questions, making choices, making decisions, using human judgment that machines cannot substitute for, at least not currently. A company that is giving this type of access not just to lawyers, but to people who are not lawyers as well.
Talk about little asides that have the impact of a nuclear bomb. That kind of was one there. But nonetheless, when I listen to everything that you just said, I can't help but think he started out in the war zone of Brooklyn in the criminal trial courts. But by finding his own way, by embracing passion, by listening to the call, Lawrence O is coming home. Lawrence, there is so much that you said today that was rich, and I'll take with me for a long time. And thinking through it all, if there's one of them that I could pull out, it is this concept that the call will occur when it does. For some, it might be quick and they might discover it when they're younger. For others, it might take time and it may not be able to be moved upon on the first day that you hear it because of all of these other financial considerations that you raised. If there is any one takeaway that you would like everyone to remember about this conversation, or anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to, what might that be?
Forgive yourself.
Well, don't just drop that line.
Forgive yourself. It's okay. You can make mistakes. You can make terrible mistakes. You can make poor choices and decisions, and you can keep making poor choices and decisions. But you've got to forgive yourself and say that it's okay to have done that. Get back up and keep on going. You have to forgive yourself, get back up, and keep on going, and then you'll find your way home.
You might be doing law tech now, but tomorrow, Lawrence, you might be a motivational speaker. How can people connect with you if they choose to do so? And I know they'll choose to, because how could they not after hearing this?
Look me up on LinkedIn, Lawrence O, or look at my website, 𝗧𝗵𝗆.ai.
Thank you. This really has been insightful, and I'm so glad you have visited us here at the Mythslayer Cafe.
It's been a real pleasure, Scott. It's been a really good experience, and thank you for helping me learn more about myself today as well.
I'm so glad you were willing to share. If you are watching this episode and you enjoyed it, please press the thumbs up button below and leave a comment. Both Lawrence and I want to hear from you. And if you have questions or additional things that you would like to hear people like Lawrence talk about at the Mythslayer Cafe, also share what some of those ideas and thoughts are, because I very much read these comments and want to engage in a discussion with you. Connection is what the Mythslayer Cafe is all about. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can get notice of every single new episode that comes out. And also follow me as well as Lawrence, using the links to each of us that you see in the captions below. Above all else, come back next time for another enlightening chat at the Mythslayer Cafe, and never once forget, I want your future to be epic.